So, what really makes a great leader? Is it all just calculated genius, or is it dumb luck? The ancient Greek historian Polybius was absolutely obsessed with this question. And for him, the perfect case study was the Roman general Publius Scipio. Scipio's victories were just so mind-boggling, so completely against the odds, that a lot of people just chalked it up to fate. But Polybius, he saw something else entirely. And his argument isn't just about one general, it's about how we should think about history itself.
This right here is the heart of the matter, isn't it? It's a debate that fascinated Polybius 2,000 years ago and one we are absolutely still having today. When you see someone achieve something incredible, what's your first instinct? Do you credit their hard work, their intellect, or do you just say, wow, they got a lucky break? Polybius argued that our answer says a whole lot more about us than it does about the leader we're talking about. And this quote, this shows you exactly what Polybius was up against. The popular opinion, the consensus, was that Scipio was just favored by fortune, that his wins defied any kind of logical explanation. People almost saw him as this divine figure, touched by the gods. But for Polybius, this wasn't just getting one guy's story wrong. It was a lazy and, frankly, a dangerous way to look at the past. Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dive deep into that core argument, genius versus good fortune. Then, we'll look at Polybius's Exhibit A, Scipio's brilliant siege of New Carthage. From there, we'll zoom out and explore Polybius's own philosophy on the historian's craft, and we'll wrap it all up with the timeless lesson he draws from it all, a really profound warning from the ashes. All right, let's get right into it with the Scipio dilemma. For Polybius, just calling a great leader lucky is a total intellectual cop-out. It's the easy answer when something seems too amazing, too perfect, to be the product of a human mind. But he was determined to prove that Scipio's success was anything but an accident. So Polybius makes this really critical distinction. As he puts it, good fortune, well, that can happen to anyone. It's totally random. But good conduct, that's something else entirely. That belongs only to those who act with prudent calculation and clear intelligence. It's kind of like the difference between winning the lottery and building a business from the ground up. One is just chance, the other is all about design. So Polybius basically goes on this mission. He wants to cut through all the gossip, all the legends that painted Scipio as some favorite of the gods. He wants to show us the real man behind the myth, a leader defined by what he calls his wealth of resource and untiring diligence. In other words, pure ingenuity and just relentless hard work. Which brings us to his prime piece of evidence. To prove his point, Polybius gives us an absolute masterclass in military strategy by breaking down one of the most audacious and brilliant sieges in Roman history, the capture of New Carthage. So, why was this city such a big deal? Well, New Carthage was the absolute nerve center of Carthaginian power in Spain. It had the region's only good harbor, giving them a direct supply line from Africa. It housed their entire treasury, all their war materials, and, this is crucial, political hostages from all over the Iberian Peninsula. Taking this city wouldn't just be a win, it would be a crippling strategic masterstroke. So how did Scipio approach this fortress? Not with a prayer, but with a plan. Step 1. Intelligence. During the quiet winter months, he was relentless, making minute inquiries, gathering every single scrap of information he could. Step 2. Find a weakness. He learned something the defenders just took for granted, and nearby lagoon became shallow and crossable when the tide went out. Step 3. Plan the attack. He designed a brilliant two-pronged assault. The main force would hit the walls, while a secret unit used his knowledge of the tides to attack from an undefended side. See? This wasn't luck. It was homework. But, even the best plans hit a snag. The initial assault was brutal. It was a bloody, awful mess. The defenders fought back with everything they had. The walls were incredibly high, and the Roman ladders actually started breaking under the strain. Men were getting dizzy from the height and just plummeting. For a second there, it looked like the whole thing might just fail. And then, the tide turns. And I mean that literally. As the defenders were completely pinned down, focused on that main assault, the water in the lagoon started to recede, just like Scipio's intelligence said it would. This was the moment. This is where his careful research paid off. He sent a hand-picked force wading through the shallow water to a part of the wall that was totally undefended. The city fell, not because of a miracle, but because of meticulous planning and a deep understanding of the natural world. Now, to really hammer this point home, Polybius contrasts Scipio with other leaders of the time. On one hand, you've got Scipio, defined by his diligence and his resourcefulness. And on the other,
Take a guy like Philip V of Macedon. Polybius says he went down a path of treachery, not worthy of a king. Where Scipio used his brain to beat his enemies, Philip relied on dirty tricks. It's a really powerful comparison of character. And the contrast gets even sharper with someone like Nabis, the tyrant of Sparta. I mean, Polybius paints this horrifying picture of leadership gone completely off the rails. A man who systematically destroyed the Spartan nobility, drove the wealthy into exile, and then handed their property and even their wives over to his personal army of murderers and crooks. This isn't just flawed leadership. This is the active destruction of a society from the very top. This focus on character and cause and effect, it leads us straight to our third section, the historian's craft. Because for Polybius, telling the story of Scipio wasn't just about getting one man's legacy right. It was about defining the very purpose and responsibility of writing history itself. So this brings up a really important question, right? How can someone writing years after an event truly know what was a calculated move and what was just a lucky break? How could they possibly get inside a general's head? Well, Polybius has a very clear answer, and it was a standard he held himself to. And there it is. For Polybius, history is not an armchair profession. You can't understand war from the comfort of a library. He believed that to write about these things with any real insight, a historian needed practical, first-hand experience. You had to have seen it. You had to have felt it, lived it. To truly understand a battle, you had to have been in battle. He calls this standard the dignity of history. He even borrows language from Homer's description of Odysseus to make his point. A true historian, just like a true hero, has to be someone who has wandered, who has seen many things, who has suffered and endured. It's that lived experience that gives you the authority to interpret events, to see past the surface and understand what's really going on. And from this philosophy, you get a clear set of rules for the true historian. Their job is to be an analyst, not just a storyteller. They have to trace the designs of the people involved, understand the real causes of success and failure, and give each subject the attention it actually deserves. And above all, they have to record what was really said and done. It's a powerful call for substance over style. But here's the thing. Even after making this powerful case for human skill, for calculation, for genius, Polybius brings us back to that other great force in our lives. In our final section, he offers this profound warning about the one thing that even the most careful leader can never fully control: fortune. And this quote is it's incredible. It comes from Scipio himself, years later, as he stood there watching the final total destruction of Carthage. Despite all his success, despite being the living proof of victory through calculation, Scipio understood that fortunes can turn on a dime. Polybius argues that this very awareness, this humility in the face of chaos, is the final mark of a truly great man. A great leader prepares for everything, including the possibility that their preparations just won't be enough. And that leaves us with a question for our own time. When we judge our leaders today, what do we value more? Is it just the victory, which we might call genius, or maybe just luck? Or do we value those deeper qualities that Polybius prized? The diligent research, the careful planning, and the humble foresight to know that no victory is ever truly final. It's a question Polybius thought was essential, and 2,000 years later, it's one we're still grappling with.